Maya stared at herself in the bathroom mirror, her hands gripping the cold marble countertop. At 34 years old, she had learned to avoid her reflection, but today was different. Today she had to face the truth that had been eating at her 4 months. The doctor's appointment from last week kept playing in her mind. Like a broken record. Dr. Peterson had been kind, but direct. Maya, your current weight puts you in a high-risk category. Before we can even think about pregnancy, we need to discuss some serious lifestyle changes. The words felt like a punch to her stomach. High risk. Those 2 words had shattered something inside her. She wasn't just carrying extra pounds. She was carrying the weight of every family dinner where her mother-in-law would casually mention how wonderful it would be to have grandchildren. Why? She was carrying the burden of every baby shower invitation that felt like a reminder of what she couldn't have. Most of all, she was carrying the fear that she was failing her husband in the most basic way a wife could fail. Maya walked to the kitchen where her husband David was making his morning coffee. He looked up and smiled, that gentle smile that had made her fall in love with him 7 years ago. But lately, even his kindness felt like pity. She wondered if he was thinking about how different their life could be if he had married someone else, someone smaller. Someone who could give him children without putting herself in danger. The worst part wasn't even the medical concerns. It was the voice in her head that whispered cruel things during her darkest moments. You're too big for this, it would say. Normal women don't have this problem. You're not built for motherhood. She had never said these words out loud, but they lived inside her, growing stronger each day. Last month, Maya had started avoiding social media altogether. Every scroll brought another pregnancy announcement, another ultrasound photo, another happy couple sharing their journey to parenthood. Her cousin Lisa had just posted pictures from her gender reveal party. Pink balloons. Everywhere. Everyone laughing and celebrating. Maya had stared at those photos for 20 minutes. Tears streaming down her face. David had found her crying that night and asked what was wrong. But how could she explain? How could she tell him that she felt like less of a woman because her body wasn't cooperating? How could she admit that she felt selfish for even wanting children when pregnancy might be dangerous for her? The truth was, Maya had been thinking about babies for years. She had imagined decorating a nursery, teaching a little one to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories. She had pictured David as a father, and the images always made her heart swell with love. But somewhere along the way, those dreams had turned into sources of pain. Maya remembered the exact moment everything changed. It was at her friend Jenny's baby shower 3 months ago. All the women were sitting in a circle, sharing stories about their pregnancies and labor experiences. When someone asked Maya when she and David were going to start trying for children, the room went quiet. Not because anyone meant to be cruel, but because everyone knew Maya's struggles with her weight. We're still figuring things out, Maya had said, forcing a smile. But inside, she was screaming. The truth was, they had been trying for 8 months, month after month of negative pregnancy tests, month after month of disappointment. Finally, Maya had gone to see Dr. Peterson, hoping for answers. Instead, she got a reality check that left her feeling hopeless. That night after the baby shower, Maya had looked at David sleeping peacefully beside her and wondered if he ever regretted choosing her. He was successful, handsome, and kind. He could have had any woman he wanted. Instead, he got someone who couldn't even do the one thing that was supposed to come naturally to women. The hardest part was watching David around other people's children. At family gatherings, he would play with his nephew and nieces, making them laugh with his silly jokes and piggyback rides. Maya could see how much he loved being around kids. She could also see the longing in his eyes. When he thought no one was looking, Maya had started making excuses to avoid these family events. "I'm not feeling well," she would say, "or I have too much work to catch up on." David never complained, but she could see the disappointment on his face. She was robbing him of time with his family because she couldn't handle watching him be the amazing father figure. She knew he would be to their own children someday. The worst moment came 2 weeks ago, during a dinner with David's parents. Mother had been going through old photo albums, showing pictures from David's childhood. "He was such a sweet baby," she had said, looking directly at Maya. "I can't wait to see what your children will look like." The comment wasn't meant to hurt, but it felt like a knife twisting in Maya's chest. That night, Maya had lain awake, staring at the ceiling, the cruel voice in her head getting louder. "You're too big for breeding," it whispered. "Look at you. Can't even take care of yourself. How could you take care of a baby?" The words were harsh and unfair, but in her darkest moments, Maya believed them. She had started researching weight loss surgeries, extreme diets, anything that might make pregnancy safer for her. But every article she read scared her more. The recovery times, the risks, the possibility that even after losing weight, her fertility might still be compromised. It felt like an impossible mountain to climb. Maya didn't know that David had been having his own struggles. She didn't know that he stayed awake some nights worried about her, not about having children. She didn't know that he had been researching adoption agencies and fertility specialists, looking for ways to support whatever decision they made together. She couldn't see past her own pain to realize that David's love for her had nothing to do with her ability to have children. Standing in their kitchen that morning, watching David sip his coffee and read the news on his phone, Maya felt the weight of all these unspoken fears pressing down on her. She knew something had to change. She couldn't keep living with this secret shame, this feeling that she was somehow broken or incomplete. But Maya didn't know that everything was about to change. She didn't know that the conversation they were about to have would challenge everything she believed about herself, about marriage, and about what it really means to build a happy life together. All she knew was that she couldn't keep carrying this burden alone anymore. Maya tried to act normal for 3 more days after that morning in the kitchen. She went to work, cooked dinner, watched TV with David in the evenings. But inside she was falling apart. Every time she looked at her husband, the words "too big for breeding" echoed in her mind like a cruel song she couldn't turn off. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Maya was scrolling through her phone while David worked on his laptop beside her on the couch. Without thinking, she opened Instagram. The first post that appeared was from her sister-in-law, Rachel. It was a picture of a tiny pair of baby shoes with the caption, "Coming this December. Baby Thompson is on the way." Maya stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Rachel was David's younger sister. She was 28, married for only 2 years, and apparently had no trouble getting pregnant. The photo had dozens of heart emojis and congratulatory comments. Maya scrolled through them, each one feeling like a small cut on her already wounded heart. "Oh wow, look at this," David said, glancing over at her phone. "Rachel's having a baby. That's amazing news." He was genuinely happy, his face lighting up with excitement for his sister. But Maya saw something else in his expression, a flicker of sadness that he tried to hide, but she caught it. That tiny moment of sadness from David was all it took. Something inside Maya completely broke. She threw her phone down on the coffee table and buried her face in her hands. The tears came fast and hard, months of suppressed emotion pouring out all at once. "Maya, what's wrong?" David immediately closed his laptop and moved closer to her. "Hey, talk to me." But Maya couldn't stop crying. All the pain she had been carrying, all the shame and fear and self-hatred came flooding out. She cried for the babies she might never have. She cried for the disappointment she saw in David's eyes. She cried for feeling like a failure as a woman and as a wife. David wrapped his arms around her, holding her close while she sobbed against his chest. He didn't say anything at first, just let her cry. After several minutes, when her tears started to slow down, he gently asked again, "What's going on? Please tell me." Maya pulled back and looked at her husband through blurry eyes. His face was full of concern and love, which somehow made everything hurt even more.
How could she tell him the truth?
How could she explain that she felt like she was ruining his life? "I can't give you children," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The doctor said I'm too high risk. My weight makes everything dangerous. And I see how you look at other people's kids, David. I see how happy you are around them. I'm taking that away from you." David's face went through several emotions: shock, confusion, and then something that looked like anger. But Maya realized he wasn't angry at her, He was angry at the situation, at the pain she was carrying alone. "Maya, how long have you been thinking about this?" he asked softly. "Months," she admitted. "Ever since Dr. Peterson told me about the risks. I keep thinking that you could have married someone else. Someone who could give you the family you deserve. Someone who isn't." She gestured at herself, unable to say the words out loud. David was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had said. Maya held her breath, waiting for him to confirm her worst fears. Waiting for him to agree that yes, maybe he had made a mistake marrying her. Maybe he did wish he had chosen differently. Instead, David took her hands in his and looked directly into her eyes. What he said next would change everything. "Maya, I need you to listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice steady and serious. "Pregnancy is not important for a happy life. Not if it means losing you or putting you at risk. You are enough, exactly as you are." Maya stared at him, sure she had misheard. "What?" "You heard me," David continued. "I didn't marry you to be a baby-making machine. I married you because I love you, because you make me laugh, because you're kind and smart and beautiful, because I can't imagine my life without you in it." "But I see how you are with kids," Maya protested, her voice shaking. "You love them. You'd be such a good father." "Yes, I like kids," David said, "and maybe someday we'll be parents. But there are lots of ways to become parents, Maya, and there's also nothing wrong with choosing not to be parents if that's what's best for us." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. For months, she had convinced herself that David's happiness depended on having biological children. She had built up this entire story in her head about how she was failing him, disappointing him, ruining his dreams. "You don't mean that?" she said, shaking her head. "You're just trying to make me feel better." David sighed and pulled her closer. "Maya, do you remember what I said to you on our wedding day?" "In my vows." She nodded. Of course she remembered. David had written his own vows, and they had made everyone cry. "I said that I choose you, every day, in every way, for the rest of my life. I said that my happiness comes from being with you, not from anything you could give me or do for me." "Did you think I was lying?" "No, but that was before we knew about the fertility issues," Maya said weakly. "It doesn't matter," David said firmly. "No, my vows didn't come with conditions, Maya. I didn't say I choose you unless you can't have kids, or I love you as long as everything goes perfectly. I said I choose you, period." Maya felt something shifting inside her chest, like a tight knot beginning to loosen. Could it really be that simple? Could David really mean what he was saying? "But what if we never have children?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. David was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "Then we'll have an amazing life together, just the two of us. We'll travel, we'll spoil our nieces and nephews, we'll find other ways to make a difference in the world. There are so many ways to live a meaningful life, Maya. Having biological children is just one option, not the only option." For the first time in months, Maya felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe David was right. Maybe she had been so focused on what she couldn't do that she had forgotten about all the things they could do together. "What if I can't believe you right now?" she asked honestly. David smiled and kissed her forehead. "Then I'll keep showing you until you do believe me. However long it takes." That night, for the first time in months, Maya slept peacefully in David's arms. She wasn't magically cured of all her insecurities, but something had shifted. The conversation had cracked open a door that had been firmly closed, letting in just a little bit of light. Maya didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning of a journey that would completely change how she saw herself, her marriage, and what it really means to build a happy life. The cruel voice in her head was still there, but now David's voice was there too, offering a different story about who she was and what she was worth. Maya woke up the next morning feeling different, but not in the way she expected. Instead of relief after finally sharing her fears with David, she felt confused and almost angry. His words from the night before kept replaying in her mind, but now they sounded too good to be true. How could he really mean that pregnancy wasn't important for happiness? Everyone wanted children, didn't they? Over breakfast, Maya watched David butter his toast and read the morning news on his tablet, acting completely normal. Part of her had expected everything to change overnight, but here he was, just being himself. The doubt crept in slowly at first, then faster. "David," she said carefully, "about what you said last night, ... He looked up immediately, giving her his full attention. "What about it? Did you really mean all of that? Or were you just trying to make me feel better because I was crying?" David set down his tablet and reached across the table to take her hand. "Maya, I meant every word." "Why would you think I didn't?" But Maya pulled her hand away, "'Cause that's what people do when someone is upset. They say nice things to make them stop crying. But then later, when reality sets in, they realize what they're actually giving up." For the next 2 weeks, Maya tested David in ways she didn't even realize she was doing. When they walked past the baby section at Target, she would stop and point out the cute clothes. "Look how tiny these are," she would say, watching his face for any sign of sadness or longing. When his coworker brought his newborn to the office party, Maya insisted they go, then watched David carefully as he held the baby. Each time, David seemed genuinely happy, but not heartbroken. He would smile at the baby clothes and say something like, "They're adorable, but look at how expensive they are." When he held his coworker's baby, he was sweet and gentle. But he handed the child back without that wistful look Maya was expecting to see. Still, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that David was just putting on an act for her benefit. Late at night, when he thought she was sleeping, she would watch him scroll through his phone. Was he looking at pictures of his friends' children? Was he thinking about what he was missing? The testing got worse. Maya started bringing up other couples they knew who had children, pointing out how happy they seemed. "Look at Tom and Lisa," she would say. "They're glowing since they had baby Michael. Don't you think they look more fulfilled now?" David would always respond calmly. "They look tired," he would say with a smile. "Happy, but very tired. And that's great for them, but it doesn't mean that's the only way to be happy." Maya's frustration grew. Why wasn't David admitting what she was sure he must be feeling? Why wasn't he showing any signs of regret or disappointment about their situation? 3 weeks after their big conversation, Maya did something that surprised even her. She suggested they should consider divorce. They were sitting in their living room on a Sunday afternoon when she said it. David was reading a book, and Maya was pretending to watch TV, but really, she was building up courage for what she wanted to say. "David, I've been thinking," she began, her heart pounding. "Maybe we should talk about separating." Hit the floor. "What?" "Maya, where is this coming from?" "I'm being realistic," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You're 36 years old. If you want children, you need to find someone who can give them to you safely. I'm just holding you back." David stared at her for a long moment, and Maya braced herself for him to agree. Part of her almost wanted him to agree, because at least then she would know she had been right all along. Instead, David got up from his chair and sat next to her on the couch. "Maya, are you testing me?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean? Are you saying these things to see if I'll fight for our marriage? Because if that's what this is, you need to know that I will fight for us every single day, but I won't play games about it." Maya felt tears starting again. "I'm not playing games. I'm trying to be fair to you. Fair to me would be believing me when I tell you how I feel," David said gently. "Fair to me would be trusting that I know what I want and what makes me happy." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, researching. But instead of looking up weight loss tips or fertility treatments, she started reading about different ways people built families and found happiness. She discovered online communities of women who had faced similar struggles. Some had found ways to have safe pregnancies with medical support. Others had chosen adoption and talked about how fulfilling it was. But what surprised Maya most were the women who had decided not to have children at all and were living rich, meaningful lives. Maya read story after story of couples who had found happiness without traditional parenthood. They traveled, pursued careers, volunteered with children in their communities, became amazing aunts and uncles. Some had initially wanted children but changed their minds. Others had faced fertility challenges and discovered that their assumptions about what they needed to be happy were wrong. One story particularly struck her. A woman named Jennifer wrote about how she had spent years believing she was broken because she couldn't have children easily. She had pushed her husband away, convinced he would be happier with someone else. But when she finally stopped testing him and started listening to him, she realized he had been telling the truth all along. He loved her, not the idea of her as a mother. Maya closed her laptop and looked over at David, who was sleeping peacefully beside her. For the first time, she started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had been telling her the truth from the beginning. The next morning, Maya did something different. Instead of testing David or looking for signs of his supposed disappointment, she simply asked him a direct question. David, if I told you right now that we would never have children, biological or adopted, how would you honestly feel? David thought for a moment before answering. I would feel sad for you, because I know how much you've wanted to be a mother. I wouldn't feel sad for me. I would feel grateful that I get to spend my life with the woman I love, doing whatever makes us both happy. For the first time since this whole journey began, Maya felt something she hadn't expected to feel. She felt curious instead of afraid. What if David was right? What if there were other ways to build a meaningful life together? What if she had been so focused on what she couldn't do that she had missed all the things they could do? Maya wasn't ready to completely believe David yet, but she was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he knew something about happiness that she had forgotten. And for the first time in months, that felt like a possibility worth exploring rather than a dream too dangerous to hope for. Maya's shift from testing David to actually listening to him didn't happen overnight. It took another month of small moments and patient conversations before she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he really meant what he said. The turning point came when David did something completely unexpected. It was a Saturday morning in October. Maya was still in her pajamas, drinking coffee and reading about adoption stories online. She had been doing this more often lately, not because she was ready to make any decisions, but because she was curious about what other options looked like. David came into the kitchen holding a pamphlet and looking slightly nervous. Maya, I want to show you something, but I need you to promise not to get upset. Maya looked up from her laptop, immediately worried. What is it? David sat down beside her and placed the pamphlet on the table. It was from a couples therapy practice. Downtown, I made us an appointment for next week. I think we need some help figuring all this out. Maya's first instinct was to feel defensive. You think we need therapy? You think I'm crazy for worrying about all this? No, David said quickly. I think we're both carrying a lot of heavy feelings about this, and I want us to have a safe place to talk through everything. I want to understand exactly what you're going through, and I want you to really hear what I'm trying to tell you. Maya stared at the pamphlet. She had never been to therapy before. The idea scared her, but it also felt like a relief. Maybe a professional could help them sort through all the confusion and fear she had been carrying. You really want to do this? She asked. I really do, David said. Not because I think we're broken, but because I think we're worth the effort. I want us to be completely honest with each other about what we want and what we're afraid of. Their first therapy session was awkward. Dr. Chen was a kind woman in her 50s who specialized in couples dealing with fertility issues. Maya spent most of the first session crying while trying to explain how she felt like she was failing as a wife. David held her hand and listened, occasionally adding his own perspective. Maya, Dr. Chen said gently, it sounds like you've been carrying the belief that your worth as a wife depends on your ability to have children. Where do you think that belief came from? Maya thought about it. I don't know. Society, I guess. My family. Everyone just expects married couples to have kids. You can't. People look at you like something's wrong with you. And David, how? Do you feel when Maya says she's failing as a wife? David looked sad. It breaks my heart. Maya is an amazing wife. She takes care of me when I'm sick. She supports my dreams. She makes me laugh every day. The idea that she thinks she's failing, just because of this one thing, it doesn't make sense to me. Over the next few sessions, Dr. Chen helped them dig deeper into their individual fears and desires. Maya discovered that a lot of her anxiety about children came from her own mother, who had always talked about motherhood as the most important. job a woman could have. David realized that while he liked the idea of being a father, it wasn't actually essential to his happiness. "What I'm hearing," Dr. Chen said during their fourth session, "is that you both have been making assumptions about what the other person wants without actually checking if those assumptions are true." She was right. Maya had assumed David desperately wanted biological children because that's what she thought all men wanted. David had assumed Maya knew how much he loved her regardless of children because he thought his actions made it obvious. Dr. Chen gave them homework. They had to spend time each week talking about their dreams for the future, but with one rule: they couldn't mention children at all. They had to focus on everything else they wanted to do together. These conversations revealed things Maya hadn't expected. David talked about wanting to travel more, maybe spending a few months each year in different countries. Maya discovered she had always wanted to go back to school and get her master's degree. They both loved the idea of having a house with a big garden where they could host friends and family. "You know what?" Maya said one evening, after they had been talking about maybe learning to cook cuisine from different cultures. "We could actually do all of these things. Kids or no kids, we could build a really amazing life." David smiled. "That's what I've been trying to tell you." But Dr. Chen also encouraged them to explore their family-building options without pressure. She referred them to Dr. Rodriguez, fertility specialist who worked with women of all sizes and had a reputation for being both honest and encouraging. Maya was nervous about the appointment, but Dr. Rodriguez was completely different from her. Regular doctor. Instead of focusing on Maya's weight as a problem, she talked about it as one factor among many that they could work with. "Maya, I want you to know that women your size can and do have healthy pregnancies," Dr. Rodriguez said. "It requires more monitoring and some lifestyle adjustments, but it's absolutely possible if that's what you choose to do." She explained that there were ways to reduce the risks, including working with a nutritionist, monitoring blood pressure more closely, and having more frequent checkups. The key is good medical support and being honest about what your body needs. But Dr. Rodriguez also talked about other options. Some couples decide that pregnancy isn't the right choice for them, and that's completely valid too. There's adoption, fostering, or simply choosing to be child-free. All of these can lead to fulfilling lives. Maya left that appointment feeling something she hadn't felt in months: hopeful. Not because she had decided what she wanted to do, but because she finally understood that she had real choices. That evening, David surprised her again. "Maya, I want to show you something else." He led her to his laptop and opened a web page for a local adoption agency. "I've been researching adoption, not because I'm pressuring you into anything, but because I want you to know it's a real option if we decide we want to be parents." Maya looked at the website, reading stories of families who had been formed through adoption. "You've really been thinking about this." "Have," David said. "But here's the thing, Maya. Whether we end up having biological children, adopting, or staying just the two of us, I need you to know that I'm happy with any of those futures, as long as you're in them." For the first time since this whole journey began, Maya felt like she could actually breathe. She wasn't sure what decision they would make about children, but she was finally starting to believe that whatever they chose, they would choose it together, and it would be okay. Maya realized that David had been showing her all along that pregnancy wasn't necessary for their happiness. Through therapy, medical consultations, and honest conversations, he had proven that his love for her wasn't conditional on her ability to have children. Now it was time for Maya to decide what she actually wanted, not what she thought she was supposed to. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same bathroom where this whole journey had started, but this time when she looked in the mirror, she saw someone completely different. Not because her body had changed dramatically, but because her relationship with herself had transformed in ways she never thought possible. The woman looking back at her wasn't carrying the weight of shame anymore. Yes, she was still working on her health, but now it was for herself, not because she felt broken or unworthy. She had started working with a nutritionist who focused on overall wellness rather than just weight loss. She was moving her body in ways that felt good, taking walks with David in the evenings and trying yoga. Classes that made her feel strong rather than defeated. But the biggest change wasn't physical at all. The cruel voice in her head that used to whisper "too big for breeding" had been replaced by David's voice saying, "You are enough. exactly as you are. Slowly, Maya had started to believe it. The decision about children hadn't been made in one dramatic moment like she had expected. Instead, it unfolded gradually through months of therapy sessions, honest conversations, and careful consideration of what they both actually wanted. Maya and David had spent weeks talking through every possible scenario. They discussed what pregnancy would look like with proper medical support. They met with adoption counselors and learned about the process of becoming adoptive parents. They even talked honestly about what a child-free life could look like and whether that might be the right choice for them. What surprised Maya most was discovering that once she stopped feeling pressured by what she thought she was supposed to want, her own desires became much clearer. She realized that while she had always imagined herself as a mother, what she really wanted was to nurture and care for someone. That desire could be fulfilled in many different ways. After months of exploration, Maya and David made their decision. They chose to begin the adoption process. Not because Maya couldn't have biological children, but because they both felt called to provide a home for a child who needed one. Dr. Rodriguez had assured them that pregnancy was still an option if they changed their minds later. But adoption felt right for them now. The adoption process was longer and more complicated than either of them had expected, but it also brought them closer together. They attended classes about parenting children who had experienced trauma. They learned about different types of adoption and what might work best for their family. They filled out endless paperwork and went through home visits that made them think deeply about what kind of parents they wanted to be. During this time, Maya discovered something unexpected. She became passionate about helping other couples who were struggling with similar issues. She started volunteering with a support group for women dealing with fertility challenges and weight-related pregnancy concerns. You know what I wish someone had told me a year ago? Maya said to a group of women at one of these meetings. I wish someone had told me that there's no wrong way to build a family. I spent so much time focused on what I couldn't do that I almost missed all the things I could do. Maya's story resonated with other women who had been carrying similar shame and fear. She found herself becoming the person she had needed during her darkest moments. Someone who could say, "You are not broken," and really mean it. David watched Maya's transformation with pride and love. Not because she had fixed herself, but because she had finally started to see herself the way he had always seen her, as a complete, worthy, amazing person whose value had nothing to do with her ability to have biological children. Sometimes I think about that night when you told me pregnancy wasn't important for happiness, Maya said to David one evening as they worked in their garden together. They bought a house with a big backyard where they could grow vegetables and flowers, one of the dreams they had discovered during their therapy sessions. What about it? David asked, looking up from the tomato plants he was staking. I think I understand now what you meant, Maya said. You weren't saying that children don't matter or that wanting them is wrong. You were saying that my worth as a person and as your wife doesn't depend on my ability to have them? David smiled and walked over to hug her, getting garden dirt on both of them. Exactly. I was saying that I love you for who you are, not for what you can give me. Maya leaned into his embrace, feeling the truth of those words in her bones. I'm sorry it took me so long to believe you. You don't need to apologize, David said. You were carrying a lot of pain that didn't belong to you. It takes time to put that down. A few weeks later, Maya and David got the call they had been waiting for. It was a little girl, 3 years old, who needed a family. Her name was Lily, and she had been in foster care for 6 months after her birth parents were unable to care for her safely. When they met Lily for the first time, Maya felt something click into place. It's this little girl with curly hair and cautious eyes wasn't the baby Maya had imagined in her dreams, but she was perfect in a way Maya couldn't have planned or predicted. Do you think she'd like us? Maya whispered to David as they waited for Lily to warm up to them during their first supervised visit. I think she's exactly who's supposed to be our daughter, David whispered back. The adoption process took another 4 months to finalize. But from that first meeting, Maya knew that this was how their family was meant to be formed. Not through pregnancy or biology, but through choice and love and commitment to a child who needed them. On the day Lily officially became their daughter, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, She had been convinced that her body was failing her and that she was failing David. She had believed that happiness required one specific thing: biological children born from her own body. Now she understood that happiness was much simpler and much more complex than that. It came from loving and being loved. It came from building a life with someone who saw her truly and chose her anyway. It came from opening their hearts to a child who needed a family and discovering that love doesn't require biology to be real and powerful. Maya still attended her support group meetings, but now she shared a different message. Your worth is... A woman isn't determined by your ability to have children, she would tell the women who were where she used to be. Your marriage can be happy and complete regardless of how your family is formed. And sometimes the life you end up building is even better than the one you originally planned. David had been right that night when he told her pregnancy wasn't necessary for happiness. But what Maya learned was that he was right about something even deeper. She was enough, exactly as she was, and she always had been. Everything else, the children, the family, the joy they shared, was just the beautiful life they had built on that foundation of unconditional love and acceptance.